On the East Coast, and I am honored and grateful to be here today to launch this first of the AUSA Spouse Series called Voice for a Simpler PCS. This live series is coming to you from Family Readiness at AUSA, designed to give you tips, resources, and the best practices to add to your military toolkit. I am honored to be the first to launch today. My name is McMannes. I am co-founder of McMannes, which is an online platform that matches businesses and companies looking to outsource with professionally skilled military spouses. I am also an Army spouse of 15 years, and today we'll be walking you through the process of what it's like to have or own a business as a military spouse, and some of the struggles and interesting situations that come along with this experience, and also using this as a voice to get your feedback and your stories and your comments. So, that being said, we want to hear from you. Please, in the comments below this video, ask your questions, share your stories. As I get into some of the content today, things are going to start clicking. Either you're going to have had an experience yourself, or you're going to know another spouse who's had a similar story. And so we want this opportunity for you to comment, ask questions, and share those stories in the comments below. The bonus point to commenting below today is that there will be a prize given away. There will be an iPad given away for this week, and all you have to do is comment and engage with me in the comments below, and throughout the next week I will continue to be here to give feedback on those questions and keep the conversation going, and then the whole round will start again next week with the next guest. I will ask for a little morale, a little moral support today from you all by giving me the thumbs up in the hearts. If you've never done a Facebook Live before, there is a little bit of a delay between when Facebook says you're live and when they actually start broadcasting it out to people on Facebook. So the way I know you're here and the way I know you're engaged with me is by giving the thumbs and the hearts, and anybody here, that would be great throughout the session today. We'll be here for about 30 minutes. I have some stuff to share with you. Probably will only take about 15, and then I would really love to have a really robust question session with you all today. But before we jump in, I'm going to give you a little bit about me and my backstory and why military spouse businesses and the support and the policies surrounding them are so important to me. My career or employment story probably looks a lot like yours. I've been everywhere from a coffee kiosk barista outside the Fort Rucker gate when the flight students were coming in at 4 o'clock in the morning, to a flex CYS staff member where I was just on call and I came in when they needed me. I've been an MWR director, and I've also had a network marketing home-based business that I did for a while. I've been a full-time stay-at-home mom. I've been a community consultant for startups out in Silicon Valley, and most recently, my own business owner. So through all those experiences, I've kind of seen the systems and the traveling of what it's like to be a military spouse with different types of businesses in and out of every PCS. So I get it, and I get that the struggle can be real, and it's not because as spouses we can't hold jobs or we don't desire incredible upward mobility in a Fortune 500 company. It's just the capacity of this lifestyle, and as being military families, it adds a layer of challenge. So thankfully in the past 10 years, incredible support organizations and initiatives have emerged to bring on these challenges to the forefront, and a lot of things have changed and improvements have been made. But at the bottom line, there is still a lot of work to do. This all kind of came up for me personally, wanting to re-advocate and bring this conversation back to the table. As this past September, my co-founder Liza Rodewald, also an Army spouse, and we launched MadSkills, which I said was a platform to match companies and businesses with professionally skilled military spouses in remote and virtual work. And we had a spouse come through, we had somebody offer them a job, and as any business savvy person should, this spouse started going around the post and asking questions. If I want to be a freelancer from my house, living on base, what does that mean? What regulations do I have to follow? She went to tax centers, she went to the employment centers, and at the end of the day, she was so frustrated and so disappointed because of the conflicting information, because of the lack of information, and really even the discouragement that she received. She turned down this position. She turned down a great working from home freelancing position because of the resources and the confusion and conflicting things that she was getting from post. So this started to bring this up again, and she was sent to 5 different buildings, told this is many different things, and I think this sounds familiar, right? A lot of us have had these experiences. So I launched into this mini investigative mode, and I ended up that day calling 6 different posts and bases from around the world and asking the same question, a very simple question. I am a military spouse. I am headed to your area. What do I need to do to register my business? Sounds like it should be simple. I ended up getting so worked up and so frustrated that I knew this conversation had to come back up to the forefront. And we have some work to do when it comes to the process of support and transferability for military spouse-owned businesses. So let's jump in. There's never a lack of information on the internet, so it's easy to feel overwhelmed or unsure of where to start. So I did the deep dive for you, and in order to corral everything into your one and only tried and true step-by-step guide, we're being able to offer this for you to assist you in the process. And that is downloadable. That should be shared on the AUSA page right before I went live. So if you go, there's a post below. And then also will be linked in the comments here below. Hey, I see people on. Hey, Michelle. Hey, Lindsay. Hey, Lindsay. Hey, Patty. Hey, Liza. So my only disclaimer here is that these are guide wires, right? This PDF, this downloadable, these are guide wires, because a very part of the issue that we hope to address is that these processes are not consistent across posts or branches. So protect yourself, bottom line, as a business owner, and always be smart and know where you should go and know what you should do, and ask the questions you need to ask if something is not clear. So just to kind of lay the baseline of the conversation, what constitutes a business when you're a spouse? Business in and of itself, like you would say, is probably a very broad definition. So for the sake of how it applies to us in the military community, I think it'd be safe to say most businesses as spouses are going to be home-based businesses with network marketing like LuLaRoe or LipSense or Advocare. Some spouses have sole proprietaries, some spouses have registered LLCs, some are freelancers, and some spouses even own corporate entities. So this is actually where the breakdown starts to happen, because transferring and registering businesses and trying to follow these protocols that are set forth, there's no differentiation in those regulations between those different types of business entities. And the sales and practices of a network marketer are going to be very different than a bookkeeper who owns a business and has 30 virtual clients across the globe. And yet the rise in scope of how spouses are creating businesses has dramatically changed, and it's only going to continue to increase across a global economy. And so this needs to be talked about. This needs to be met. There is a growing disparity between regulations sitting there and how to do things and the amount of how military spouse businesses are changing. In some of the research I did, I won't get too much into the nitty-gritty of it, but a lot of the first thoughts about spouse-owned businesses are very archaic, like door-to-door vacuum salesman type terminologies in these regulations. So it's time for a change, and it's time for this conversation to be had again. Why register? I get that a lot when I talk about this with spouses. They're like, well, why even register? Why even start that process when you know it's going to be frustrating, and why not just work under the radar? So I know the unspoken is, if I don't register, who's going to even know? And that may be tempting, but let's just all work together to take this 10 notches up and work to reform and modernize this registration process and bring in those components that may be able to automate it a little bit. I do have ideas, and I've spoken with a lot of spouses about ways to make this process easier, not only for us, but easier for those who are also regulating it and tracking it. It's safer in the long run to actually go through this process, ask the questions, go where you need to go, and we'll talk about that in a second. Because one, you're safeguarding your business that you've worked hard to grow. You don't want to lose that. You don't want to put yourself in jeopardy. But also your quality of life. If you are going against regulations that exist, you can lose housing privileges, post privileges, and a lot more could be at stake if you're not taking care of your business and the things that you need to be. So if you live on post and want to conduct business on post, you have to register. And if you live off post, but you want to work on post or offer services on post, you must also register with the post that you're by. The thing I often also hear is, okay, then I'll just live on off post and I won't worry about it. And that works for some. I've made that decision myself at certain times. But because of the nature of the military community, especially the Army community, not everybody can choose to live off post. That's not an easy answer, and that's not indicative of a community that is aware of quality of life and support services. So not everybody can live off of post. So if you have that opportunity to make that decision and you decide to live off post and run your business, then that's great and that works for you. But it's systematic and there's a much larger issue at hand. So if we can start to address that and support everybody across the board, it's more of a passive fix, right? It becomes something actually workable. So post and base regulations aren't the only layer of ownership that you also need to be aware of. Depending on where you are, there are going to be local and federal regulations regarding business ownership, taxes, insurance. If you're a home-based business or network marketing, a lot of that is rolled up for you in that business model. But if not, those are things you have to learn. Myself, as a C Corp business owner, I am still daily in the learning process of learning what it means to live in Virginia, be a resident of Tennessee, have a company incorporated in Delaware, the bank account in Missouri because your co-owner has land there. And like you tell these stories and lawyers and business attorneys, they just look at you like they don't know what to do with you. So that's a whole different level, but the struggles are real and we just have to continue to work through these because at the end of the day, quality of life is talked about a lot and we are in charge of our own quality of life. And so if the support structures can be put in there to help us increase to do that, we will all be better off. So what is this registration I have so fondly spoken of to this point? Again, they're going to vary. Unfortunately, I wish I could be here today with you all just saying, this is it, tried and true, follow this process, you'll be approved, good to go. But it's going to vary depending on where you are. But my recommendations is to start in 2 specific places, and that is going to be your local MWR headquarters office and also your community housing office. So my suggestion is to go in and say, and you can use this as a script if you want, I own a business and I'll be running this from my home here on post. Could I get the paperwork necessary to begin this process? And then who knows what will happen next. You may be handed paperwork, you may fill it out, hand it back in, they'll get back to you, you're approved or not. We'll talk about what happens if you're not. But that's where you start. You start there. And I wish I could tell you in all honesty that, it always goes well, but the process and the truth is that it may not. And so we're going to talk about that, about what to do if that does happen. In my personal experience, when I did register a home-based business a couple posts ago, it was just a piece of paper and I had an extra disclaimer because it was in the health and fitness realm. And I had to sign that I wouldn't openly compete with MWR services that were offered of the same like. And I left it with the office for approval. They could tell you that the timeline may be 5 days to get this paperwork back to you, or they could tell you 6 weeks. Which is something I see as something that needs to be flagged. Whether you understand the type of business model or industry somebody is working in or not, there is no business out there that will thrive and grow and be sustainable when you are telling somebody to stop for 6 weeks every PCS. Not going to happen. And so we need to address that and we need to be talking about that. These are businesses, this is quality of life, this is financial stability that spouses are bringing into military families that most likely will be there for them as they're transitioning out of the military, which we also know is a very stressful time. So the more that we can make those consistent and not give these almost passive laissez-faire, like, oh, it'll take 6 weeks. Well, that may mean nothing to you, but to me as a business owner, I can't have clients across the globe and tell them, I have to stop for 6 weeks, I'll get back to you. A business just doesn't work like that. The most common sequence of approvals happens through MWR, DECA, which are the commissaries, AFES, which is the PX, or NEX, depending on where you are. And since most housing is now privatized, there's usually some layer of approval that may happen. Some, depending on who your housing entity is, you just registered, they don't care. They're usually the easier of the process. Some may say, well, I need your MWR approval before I can approve. Some MWRs will say, well, I need the housing approval before we can approve. And you see where this gets really messy and really frustrating on top of everything else that you're trying to do at this time of transition and settling in. So if you're sent back and forth with conflicting information, all I can say and share with you is to stay positive, no matter how frustrating it gets, and stay professional. You have to treat this process, no matter how infuriating it may get, like it's landing your biggest client, right? Consistent and relentless professionalism will get you so much farther than negative responses or other alternatives that sometimes we may turn to out of just pure frustration. So the next question is, all right, awesome. So I go through this process and I just expect approval, right? And unfortunately, that answer is no. Your request or application to run your business on base or on post can be denied on various accounts and for various reasons. Legally, that's because how agreements work between the DoD and AFES or DECA. They were laid out that way, and I believe there's some work to be done, and I believe there's some improvements that can be made supporting more of the foundation of what military spouses are doing in building businesses. So I won't get into the nitty-gritty of that today, but if you are denied, if something comes back denied, do ask why, and even ask for the specific regulation that you were in violation of or something that you did not pass. The more information you have to protect yourself as a business owner is where you need to go if you're then going to ask for help or you're going to try to go through the approval process again. Even ask for the specific person or the contact for the person that denied you. You know, you would just like to follow up. You would like to see what you could change or what you could explain better to go through this process. I think I read it best on a blog a while ago from Military by Owner that says capitalism does not reign on base. And it's true. The main approved commercial enterprises on military bases actually hold what is referred to lovingly as the 17 or 18 first rights of refusal. And that means that some of these businesses have rights to refuse those listed businesses that are in that 17 or 18 list that come across their path for approval. And those can range anywhere from photography to hairstylists to clothing sales from your home. I won't bore you with rattling off that complete 17 or 18, but I will be sure that that information is shared with you in the comments below today. And we can talk about it. We can have questions. We can have more conversations about what that means for you. The other part people ask a lot about is overseas. That is a whole different conversation, a whole very difficult layer to talk about because there are SOFA agreements. If you've never heard of those, it stands for Status of Forces Agreement. And those are the actual legalities of allowing U.S. forces to be present in another country. And that is just a whole different realm of conversation and responsibility. And so it is difficult, and it's a very important conversation that also needs to be had. And so the more stories and the more that we can talk about that, perhaps there's things that can be done in the future. But I just do know that that is a very different and a very difficult conversation to be had when you are working overseas. So a few other FYIs, there are some outliers to be aware of regarding certain businesses and services on post. A huge one is childcare on post. Offering to babysit your neighbor's kids so she can have an hour of self-care during a deployment is not what we're talking about. We all need that sanity. We need that person to help us. But what we're talking about is actually watching and caring for somebody consistently in your home on base or post. I think most regulations is 10 hours or more a week. And if you do that consistently, it's against policy and you can lose all those privileges, housing, post, everything I've talked about before. My recommendation on this is I actually have a background in childcare. My first life was I worked at MWR and directed MWR programs. So if you are interested in that, go through the appropriate channels. It is an incredible opportunity to give yourself a career base and an opportunity to bring in money. And you do that through your family child care center. And you can call any CYS office and they'll put you in touch with the person who's in charge of that. And you actually go through a whole circuit of training and approvals to do this out of your home. And then you have a business and you have money coming in and you're helping those around you in a legal way that you know you've safeguarded yourself and the people that you're taking care of. Final quick note, which I don't have much experience about myself, I know a lot of you do because I have bought awesome cakes from spouses, is the baking and food services that happen. Obviously, we're all thankful that restaurants that we eat at are highly and closely governed for sanitary and health practices, right? Nobody ever walks into a restaurant thinking, oh man, I wish they didn't have a 90% health rating on the window. And really, home-based food and baking services, in homes should not be held to any different regulations. They need to be governed and they need to be regulated. And this isn't just a military community issue. I've actually seen local stories about people selling things from their home and the local city coming after them. So follow the processes that are out there. Ask the questions. Again, if you want to run a business, know the laws and regulations around you. And I'm happy to talk about that more. If I don't know, I'm happy to help research or connect you and I or whoever to getting those answers that we need. If you see the opportunity for something to be updated or improved upon or modernized, speak out and let's collectively start to improve these situations for all of us as a military community. So as you can see, there are many parts of this process that can be frustrating and feeling restrictive. But at the end of the day, we know we are military families. There are always rules and regulations that we're going to have to abide by and be thankful for, because at the bottom line, that is just the lifestyle that we live. That being said, we do have a voice and an opportunity to create change that will modernize and possibly upgrade base-to-base registration processes and encourage others and more easily to jump into the self-employment world, which I really believe has a lot of benefits for the quality of life that's talked about so often in the military community, to empower us to take care of that and to create that quality of life for ourselves. So there are ideas that I mentioned before to kind of systematically improve. There's a lot of conversations, and we'll just keep bringing it back and we'll keep talking about it. So there are some ways that I can ask you all to help. And the first one is there's a petition that we will also post. And I ask you to take a few moments to sign that. It's all virtual. All you have to do is sign it. And it's a petition that was put together by myself and two other business owner military spouses. And basically, we've named it Help Knock Down Barriers to Military Spouse Home-Based Businesses. And all it is a very thought-driven, professionally presented petition to bring forward to those that we know can make change. And in order to do that, we can do that, right? But it's better to have that voice of the community behind us. So please take a second to share that, to sign that petition. And it addresses, read it please, it addresses a lot of the issues that we've covered here today, including the inconsistent approval and unfair business practices. And I think we're right at about 600 spouses, and our goal is 1,000 to have before we present this and move this forward. So I would really be thankful, and I know the community that I'm involved in and your neighbors that have businesses, if you don't yourself, would be grateful that so that we can take this up to the next level to some senior Army leadership. AUSA, who has hosted this event, again, is ready to advocate on your behalf. They would not have asked me here today. They would not have the next 4 weeks of incredible content and guest speakers lined up if they weren't willing to do that and take that step. So stay tuned for the next 4 weeks because there'll be a lot of great takeaways and a lot of information that AUSA is ready to take straight to the top. So quick resource list. I'm just going to run through a couple places that I know have been on the front line of supporting the military spouse community. At McMannes, we do a really great job of bringing in opportunities for spouses to work in virtual opportunities. The Millspo Project is a really great nonprofit organization that brings together communities of business spouses or business-minded military spouses. In Gear Career is another really great opportunity to go to a local chapter, talk to people hand in hand, face to face about being a military spouse in career or networking and helping you find those resources to get you where you want to go next. And Spouse Buzz always does a great job with staying up to date on these issues. A lot of the information out there about home-based business registration is from Spouse Buzz, so that's a really great way to kind of keep up to date, and they've also done a great job to support this petition. And then the Other Side of Service is a really great organization, another nonprofit that tells the stories of military spouses in careers and business owners. So I encourage you to check them out as well. All right, I think I'm down to 8 minutes. I was supposed to have 10, so I did pretty good. I want to answer some questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my screen real quick so that I can actually read the questions coming through. And I will start to take some of your questions. Let me pull it up real quick. Awesome. All right, I'm just going to do it from here because I can see it. Michelle said, what can we ask Army leadership to help with to streamline this process from post to post? Oh, that's a really loaded question. I think there's definitely a starting point in understanding, one, what the regulations say currently, and does that match where we need to go? Does that actually match where the spouse community with their businesses is sitting? So I would say a review in that conversation. And then the dissemination of that information. When I called and I asked 3 different offices that should be supporting me and should know the answers to what I'm asking, when they didn't, or they all told me different things, like that's a breakdown, and so that needs to be improved upon as well. All right, let's see. Allie Jones said, thanks, Erica. Yes, the National Military Family Association has a scholarship for military spouse business owners. So Allie dropped that link there, so be sure to check that out if that's something you're interested in. And let's see, what else do we have? It's AUSA. Oh, Michelle asked the same question. Sorry, I missed it the first time. Let's see. I don't really see too many other questions. Is there anything from anybody joining or watching? Patty, she said, what did you find was the biggest obstacle to registering your business? The timeline. Not knowing 5 days to 6 weeks if I could practice my business. And when I had that conversation about 6 months ago where I was calling around and asking the same question, I had one specific base that told me I could not work for 6 weeks until I had that approval back. And I very kindly tried to explain to her that, you know, I had a business, I had clients, that was not something within my business model that would thrive or be sustainable. And she really could have cared less. She said, this is how it works. It's the regulation. Can't run your business for 6 weeks until you hear back from us. So that's an obstacle, and that's very frustrating to be told. So I think that would be the place that I would start at. But all right, so in closing, if questions, as people watch this through the playback, because I know it's midday and a lot of people are probably busy, I will be here for the next week to engage in this thread below. I'll be responding to questions. Please bring your stories. You can also continue to help us by sharing this video out. Once I'm done today, there'll be the little share button over to the side underneath the video. And you can share that to your profiles. You can share that to military spouse groups that you're a part of. And ask them, tell them that AUSA, we're seeking their comments and their participation in these conversations, and we want to hear their voice. And last but not least for today is to not forget the prize. There is an iPad up for grabs, and all you have to do is comment. So if you have friends, tag them in this video, tell them to come comment, watch a few minutes of it, ask a question, and that will automatically put you in the drawing for the prize. So we will be back next week to pull on another thread of this PCS fabric that we're always constantly weaving together. And so come back, Patty will be going live the day before with a little intro, and then next Thursday, which is June 8th at noon, we will have another guest speaker. Thank you guys so much, and I'll talk to you later.